The Taurus TS9, a Bubitz design made in Brazil. Coming up, you'll see absolute first shots through the gun. We'll do full magazine +1, see how these mags run. Take it over to the what's for dinner table to see what it eats. The spinner for sights and trigger control, do some practical accuracy, and then give you a concluding thoughts. Coming up next on GBGuns. Target camera's firing up. Got a C-zone piece of steel out there at about 20 yards. Man, I tell you, Taurus fans have been relentless in asking that we hit this one up. I reached out to Taurus when the announcement first hit that these be coming to the US and got no reply. So usually when companies don't respond to me like that, it means either there's something to hide about the gun or they don't care about the gun, which is kind of unfortunate because with the BB6 out of production, and in fact BB Tech's out of production, the Kimber Mako completely not acknowledging that it is the Bubix Bro. This is the closest thing you can get these days. I don't know how many of them are in the US. As you saw on the tabletop, the safety is non-functional on mine. I also noticed while loading these magazines, I had seen a lot of comments saying, oh, they're TH9 mags or TH9 mags. Same body, but different length. The magazine from my TH9 is too short to fit in the TS9. So you're stuck with the two mags that you get. One of my magazines appears to have been used. I don't know if that was test fire or what, but these are the things you gotta go through for journalism. 10 rounds of Winchester white box. The loaded chamber indicator did pop up, that's nice. Winchester white box is a little bit on the hotter end. See how we do with the TS9. Trying to get a good feel for it. That trigger is definitely click and no bang. I can tell by my load chamber indicator that it's loaded, and we have a soft primer strike. Little light there. Put that at the bottom of the or back in the magazine, see if it goes off the next time. But I can tell I've got a round in it thanks to that chamber indicator. Okay, and this is our questionable round. Yep, nothing. All right. It's definitely a trigger you got to pull through. But other than that, not bad. Recoil very manageable, likely to that Bubitz tilting action. It's not quite a Browning action, it's a modified Browning action, if you will. But very comfortable to shoot. The traction on the grip is excellent. Let's do full mag +1. See how these mags run fully stuffed. There's our one. And full, so we got 18 rounds. Usually with this, I like to try to go as quickly as I can to guarantee my shots. Looks like I'm hitting low right with this, so I might favor a little high left and see how quick I can go and try to hit these. Man, hopefully the camera's showing where I'm missing, but I'm aiming dead center. That was my thumb writing on the slide release. I felt it just before the last shot. Man, those shots are way right. The sights, now the front sight is off center for sure. Hope it's not loose in there. Seems to be snug. That may be a problem as time goes on. I'm not going to adjust anything so we can see on paper and through the rest of the test how this goes. But aside from a misaligned sight, very controllable. The trigger, a little tough because I just shot a very crisp hammer fired gun. You got to kind of squeeze through. There was a little bit of grit, a little roughness that seemed to either go away immediately or I got used to it and just started pulling a little bit harder on it. It's definitely a duty grade trigger. But so far, not bad. Let's take it for what's for dinner, see what it eats. It's that time again. What's for dinner time? Thanks to our patrons, Ammo Squared, and a couple manufacturers, we've got 10 different loads. As I go by these, you'll notice they each have a different bullet weight, bullet projectile shape. The OJI is in a different spot. We got everything case material. We're looking to see what will the gun eat. 3 rounds. Does it load from slide lock? Does it cycle and feed the next load based on the energy of the round? And a third round to reduce variables. If you're curious about any of these and want to try them, because I know we have some odd stuff, check the pinned comment for the full review over at gbgunsdepot.com. We'll link to this stuff where we can find it. We are 7 yards away. These are 2-inch circles, not exactly precise aiming points, but they give us an idea of where the gun will print with these loads. Be interesting, especially with that low right thing happening. The low could be me. I really doubt the right is. Usually I don't air right, usually I air left from squeezing the gun too much, but we'll get a better idea as the review goes on. Our lightest load starting off is a 1776 lead-free 90 grain. Circle number 1. Aiming dead center. No issues with the light stuff. I can tell you that reset is the tiniest of resets. I can hear it because I'm at a quiet range. About not to be, someone else showed up finally. But definitely not a gun for reset shooting unless you get really good at it. I think it's just for stroking. It's a duty gun. Critical defense light, 100 grain, little tiny pointy bullet. Looks more like a 380 projectile than 9mm. Make sure I'm still in frame. Nice group with that stuff. That was impressive. I think I'm starting to learn the gun. Noticing it's still favoring right. Of course, not nearly as dramatic at 7 yards as it is at 20 yards. Next up is Cellular Blot's non-toxic 100 grain. Definitely more recoil. Shot well. Really comfortable. It's not often I can get my whole hand on a gun comfortably, and these 17 round stocks are the way to go for me. Next is an FMJ New Republic 115 grain. Chose this stuff because, well, we have it, and in our test of 23 loads of 9mm 115 grain, it was on the softer side. How's it run in the TS9? It does not feel soft. But shot all right. Next we have some SIG Elite Defense 115 grain. Nickel plated cases. The nickel plating is corrosion resistance to survive better. It is carry ammo. It also reduces friction inside the magazine into and out of the chamber as well. So it tends to run smoother. Shot well. Smells pretty good too. Can't quite give you notes on it yet. I'm recovering from a cold. Next is Wolf Steel Case 115 grain. We use steel and aluminum in these tests because the steel has greater friction between the loads, between the rounds in the magazine into and out of the chamber. Also expands and contracts at a different rate than brass, so some guns choke on it. This Wolf is hotter ammo. Oh yeah. But shot well. I think if I drift these sights a little bit, have myself a pretty good shooter. Federal Syntech PCC load 130 grain. This has synthetic jacket, slightly different projectile shape, and a slower burning powder meant for longer barrels to get what you need or should be getting out of a PCC. But sometimes it's fun in handguns. I'm not finding much of a discernible wall on the trigger. You just kind of have to pull through, stroke through, which is a style of shooting that many people do, and it's probably appropriate as a duty gun. You're not pulling the trigger at all until you've got full intent. Nearly skipped it. Went out of order here. Blazer aluminum 115 grain is now going to be circle number 8. Same reason we use the steel. Shot nice. I am enjoying this thing, despite some frustrations, irritations initially. It's a pretty nice shooting gun. All right, now the SMB Tactical 140 grain subsonic. Interesting choice for subsonic. It's a little bit light of a bullet, which means they also have less powder. Is it going to cycle the Bubitz action? Yep, pretty comfortably at that. And our heaviest load, it's also likely to be our spiciest, is the Federal Training Match 147 grain. This is the purple stuff. This big box is because you get 50 rounds of HST and 50 rounds of the purple training load that is supposed to match the recoil on it. 147 grain HSTs tend to be a little bit on the spicier side. See how we do here. Oh yeah. In fact, I think the brass hit my knuckle on the way out. Man, I felt that whole percussion through my whole body, but shot well. TS9 seems to eat everything. An interesting test coming up next will be the spinner for sights and trigger control. That is our Titan Great Outdoors 6-inch spinner target. We are back about 13 yards. I'm obviously standing next to the camera. Leave you zoomed in so you can watch. I like to use this for sights and trigger control because it's a small target at distance that requires fine aiming. As I hit it, it starts moving. The more I hit it, the faster it moves, the more important timing the shot becomes, and that's where trigger control comes in. So, how does it do? We're going to use a Winchester white box, a little bit of a hotter ammo. We've got more than a 4-inch barrel, so we should have plenty of energy. This will also really show us that point of aim issue. Bam. As you saw, with hotter ammo and a longer barrel, you get a lot more energy. I had none of the issues there that I did in the opening scene. So what's the difference? Learning the gun. It's something you just have to do. This gun is quite different from what I was shooting just moments ago. And even with all my experience and having been through about 400 handguns now, I still got to learn each one. That's why we bring you guys on the journey, so you understand that as well, and don't pick up a different gun and suddenly think it sucks because you haven't learned your part yet. The sights are plenty bright and sharp, stayed on it. The trigger, using a pull through method versus a come to a wall and break and reset off the break, just pulling through, works fine on this. That method is perhaps more universal than my traditional or usual of staging and breaking. So that's not really a complaint. It's just something you got to be aware of with the gun. Recoil control was not bad at all. One of the things that I have theorized about the Bubitz action is because, and you can see how much less tilt is in this barrel than in a regular one, because the lock is happening further back and the barrel doesn't have to tilt as much, you don't get as much of a dramatic weight shift happening in hand as the gun cycles. That could be what helps keep it on target. I think two other factors are that I can get my whole hand on this stock, and Taurus's traction is pretty good. It's really grippy. Would that be rough on a belly for carry? I don't know, that's a personal preference. These sights worked fine for me. I love that they're dovetail and set screw in place. That means that you could probably get some nice sights for it. My opinion is changing as this goes on. Next up, we'll use the same Winchester white box spicy stuff for some practical accuracy. And you know it's a GBGuns video because got a plane circling. It's foggy and supposed to be raining. I don't know, maybe the guy wants to practice his IFR stuff. Anyways, we got a 1-inch target at 7 yards. That's that black square there. Going to be using the same Winchester white box they've been using for range ammo and the other stuff. See how it does. This is really where I collect my concluding thoughts on the gun, and it can be a realistic representation of accuracy that you might want to expect out of the gun. Except my target's blowing around. That should have been 5. Yep. Thumb on the slide release again. It's just my hand size on this gun. Everyone's question, should you run out and buy a TS9? If you want an affordable way to experience a different action type other than a standard Browning action, maybe. Could be a good fit for that. Is it a good gun? I think so. It's not terrible. I had to get used to the trigger, but once I did, everything ran pretty well. Notes for hand size and hand fitment, and changing the back straps wouldn't have changed this because they don't change high enough into the tang. It was just that with my XXL hands, my thumb lines up perfectly on the slide release. Just something you got to learn to, change grip style to avoid if that's going to happen to you, just like Walthers and Canucks too. And the other bit is these wonderful indentations on the side as reference index points. Could be a spot for the support thumb, but my thumbs are a little bit too long, so I couldn't quite reach it. That's a me thing, not a gun problem. Overall, I think it's a good gun. I think it's not a waste of money to get one. If you're looking for something with a little bit heavier, less defined of a trigger, more duty-oriented trigger, and I say that because I know many of you are wondering, how does it compare with the G3? If you have a G3, should you get a TS9, or which one should you choose between? Just in dry firing, I can say the trigger on the G3 is a little bit nicer, a little more predictable for me and my shooting style. That doesn't mean that this is wrong as a defensive or duty gun. And obviously these aren't competition guns. This trigger style on the TS9 is not inappropriate, especially when you think of lesser trained civilians or even law enforcement, because as much as everyone likes to tote law enforcement and military, for most of them the firearm is not their primary function. That's not why they have the job and why they put on the uniform. It's one tool in the inventory. And so unfortunately for most of them, they are not the masters of it that a lot of people think they are. For folks that aren't that great, the stroke style trigger pull, I think, is a smart thing to do. It's more natural, more intuitive. And that's what this is set up for. Recoil wise, it feels good. It ate what we wanted it to. Once I figured out how to shoot it, I shot much better with it than I did originally. So I really can't have any solid complaints. Maybe a nicer trigger would be good, but all trigger types have their place. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this one. What I think could be interesting to do, though it would be a bias of my shooting skill and abilities, is maybe try some pairs on a full-size target, G3 versus TS9. Yeah. Here's the premise. Got 6 rounds for each gun. Got a full-size torso 7 yards away. Going to do some kind of ready up hammers or controlled pairs. I think I'll go more for the hammer. That's aiming once, squeezing twice, and see what kind of control and speed we get out of these. With 6 rounds, should be able to do each gun 3 times, right? And to preface this with any bias or unscientificness, I've just spent time shooting this TS9. The G3 I haven't shot in probably at least a year. I dry fired once or twice real quick just to get a feel for the trigger, so I can make the commentary you saw in the aftershots, but it's been a while. So I'm a master with neither gun. Let's see how we do. Am I recording on there? Yes. Up and up. Notice we did not get slide lock. That's once again because my thumb hit, especially while focusing on a drill and going for speed. Hopefully you guys can see clearly there on the target. I've got one that's out of the A zone a little bit high, but proof that this trigger doesn't necessarily slow you down if you're deliberate with it. I'll reset the target and we'll try it. I can see daylight through that target. This is one of those infinity defense targets that they sent, promising 1,000+ rounds or thousands of rounds of durability. This does not have that many rounds through it, but it's because I hit the center so many times. So my own fault. I won't complain about that. Now the G3, which I haven't shot in a while, I'm going to use the manual safety. So it's on until I come up and then I'll fire. Whew, I forgot about that slide bite. That hurts. Damn. So I found myself grimacing and moving a little bit slower just because I don't want the slide bite. All A zone, stayed pretty much under control. You can see the clearance. I haven't moved my hand between my knuckle and the end of the slide there. And that is a sharp, sharp edge on the end of that thing. I had completely forgotten about that. That alone might be a reason why you may want the TS9 over the G3 if you've got larger hands. Whew, man, if I had dove in hard, like on a defensive draw on these things, I would be bloody knuckle, because it is sharp. I remember now, I bled on this gun in the review. But on back to the test, is there a huge difference? You guys saw the speed, you guys saw the accuracy. The sights on the TS9 are bigger, and for defensive quick getting on, I had a much easier time finding the sights and getting on with the TS9. The trigger did not slow me down. It was more comfortable to shoot for sure, not just the slide bite, but got more beaver tail up here that extends deeper than this kind of rounded off nub thing that's on the G3. Between the two, I think, now that I've got experience with it and learned the trigger and proven that you can shoot it quickly, I'd go with the TS9. Thank you to those who asked over and over again for us to review this thing. Thank you, patrons, for making the purchase possible. We'll see you guys in the next video.